Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I'm going to give you one bold prediction for every single NBA team in the 2025 season. I did 10 bold predictions for the 2025 year recently, and y'all really liked that video. A lot of you asked for more for your favorite team, so we're going to do one for every single squad. As always, I'm going to go in alphabetical order, this time going by location, so Atlanta Hawks to Washington Wizards. There will, of course, be timestamps if you want to find your favorite team, and this is on a variety of stuff, maybe a player hitting a certain statistical mark, how well the team does throughout the season, award winners, all things of that nature. Let me know down below what one of your bold prediction is for your favorite team and what you think about the one that I picked for your squad. And yeah, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos and any video ideas you have for the rest of the summer, because we've still got around a month and some change till the NBA season. Let me know down below in the comments. Let's get into the list. Starting things off with Atlanta, I'm going to say that Jalen Johnson ends up top 3 in MIP voting. I did my way too early NBA awards a few weeks back, I believe it was, and Jalen Johnson was my pick to win MIP, and I still may go with him, but at the very least, he's going to be in that conversation. Last year, he would have been if he played 65 games, but of course, there was the injury which prevented him from reaching the mark you have to hit to even qualify for awards now. This season, he's going to average right around 20 points per game, if not more. I could see him getting up to 21, 22. Going to have a huge offensive role now that DeJounte Murray is gone. He still has Trae Young to set him up a teammate to play off of. The defense is going to continue to improve. Jalen Johnson is one of those players that I've become extremely high on. I think an all-star appearance isn't too far away and out of the realm of possibility for Jalen Johnson. It's not going to happen this season because the Hawks aren't going to be very good, but in the near future, Jalen Johnson as an all-star is very possible. And this season, I think he takes a step forward and is again in MIP talks. And maybe this isn't the end if he continues to ramp up towards that trajectory. For the Celtics, I'm going to say that they do not get the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. The reason this is bold is because they ran away with it this past season, but I just don't think the Celtics are going to really chase it quite like that. They're probably going to rest some more guys. They just came off a really long season, of course, raising the Larry O'Brien. They have kind of gotten over the hill now. Of course, they want to repeat. They want to three-peat. They want to make this thing a dynasty if they can, but you don't need the 1 seed if you're the Celtics to do that. You just ran through the NBA playoffs despite being somewhat injured. I think they're cool with like a 2 or a 3 seed, plus the East is just better now. I could see the Sixers getting if they stay healthy. I could see the Knicks gunning for it. Even the Bucks, if they really figure things out. Maybe another team rapidly approaches the scene and suddenly they're a contender for the spot. I think the Celtics will for sure be a top 2, top 3 seed at the worst, but 1 seed, don't think it's really necessary for them. And I could see them just kind of playing it a lot more relaxed going into the playoffs rather than gunning for that top spot, feeling like they have to. On the opposite side of the spectrum for the Brooklyn Nets, I'm going to say they win 12 games or less. I know they've still got some talent. Cam Thomas is decent. They've still got Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Nick Claxton. Like, it's not the worst team ever, but I just feel like the Nets are going to do everything in their power to lose as many games as they physically can this season because they got their pick back. This is their chance to get somebody to go into the rebuild. They don't have some of their picks going into the future. They have to capitalize right now. And with this being a stacked draft class, Cooper Flag at the top, I just feel like Brooklyn trades Cam Johnson, trades Dorian Finney-Smith throughout the season. They're going to let Cam Thomas go out there, shoot a billion times. They'll have some fun moments from young players, but this is not a good team in the first place, and it really feels like they will do everything in their power. Like, they could have 10, maybe even close to 12 wins around the All-Star break, and I could see them not losing out completely, but winning like 2 or 3 games the rest of the way because they want to try that hard to get to the bottom spot. They will have some competition with like the Wizards probably being pretty bad as well, so Brooklyn's going to go all out. They have to make sure they grab a top spot in this draft, and I think they do their best to do that. For Charlotte, I'm going to say that LaMelo Ball doubles his career triple-doubles. Right now, he's only got 10 through the first few years of his career, and a lot of that has just been being unable to stay on the court. Like the season where he was an all-star, where he was actually healthy, he had 5, which is half of his career total. I'm going to say this year, he's out there a good bit more, and with more talent, he's going to grab at least 10 triple-doubles this season. He's a guy that is very capable of doing that as a bigger guard who can grab rebounds. Of course, a great playmaker. He's always going to give you double-digit points unless it's a pretty bad night for him. He's got Brandon Miller next to him now. He's got Miles Bridges out there, Mark Williams, like Trey Mann's in the fold, Josh Green, Grant Williams. This is a sneaky fun team over there in Charlotte at the moment. I think LaMelo Ball, keeping my fingers crossed, knock on wood for Hornets fans, will actually be able to stay somewhat on the court and will, again, double his current triple-double total throughout the early goings of his career. Honestly, the bolder part may be saying that he's going to play like 50, 60 games. For the Bulls, I'm going to say something their fans probably won't like. I am starting to think Zach LaVine's going to be there the whole season. I believe I said in my 10 bold predictions video, one of them was that Zach LaVine will get traded by the deadline. So this is kind of me hedging my bets a little bit, but also news came out recently that they're trying to mend the relationship with Zach LaVine. I just don't understand what they're doing. I mean, I guess there really is no offers out there for him because his value is at an all-time low. They want to try and rehabilitate it a little bit. I get it, but please you finally moved off of DeMar DeRozan, move off of Zach LaVine, move off of Vucevic, let these young guys do their thing, find their potential, start this rebuild off. I just hate that this is even a possibility. And honestly, at this point, I'm just convinced the Bulls want to maintain whatever mediocrity they can for as long as they can. So I'm going to say that Zach LaVine just finishes the season as a Bull, maybe gets traded in the summer. But let's say this season he's in red the entire year. For the Cavs, I'm going to go out there and say that Evan Mobley averages 20 plus points per game. He was not that far away this past season, averaged right around 16. But the big thing is that there still is Darius Garland, there's Donovan Mitchell, there's Jarrett Allen. There are a lot of mouths to feed, like you still have like Max Strus and Karis LeVert. And Mobley hasn't quite taken that big offensive jump. I don't think he's going to revolutionize his offensive game this season, but I do think he takes a step forward. I think part of that is I imagine Donovan Mitchell will take a bit of a step back. Not that he's going to be worse, but I just don't think he's going to be shooting as much this season. I feel like with him and Garland still trying to figure out as a backcourt, he might defer a little bit more, let Mobley get involved, let Allen, because I do think for the Cavs to ultimately be successful, they've got to be more than just the Donovan Mitchell one-man show, and he's great at doing that. But again, Garland is really bad last season. They have to find some kind of continuity there. They need Mobley to take a jump. They need Allen to continue to be productive. So yeah, I'm going to say that Mobley, gets more involved in the offense. The three-point jump was real last season. I think he shoots more of those. Just kind of comes into his own a little bit more in his offensive self-creation game too. And yeah, averages over 20 points per game, making him a first-time All-Star. For the Mavs, Luka, I'm going to say he averages a triple-double on the season. He's always capable of grabbing one on any given night and feels like the next logical player to go ahead and achieve that mark, but it's only ever been done by two guys in Russell Westbrook and Oscar Robertson, so it is incredibly difficult. And for Luka, the big hurdle is the rebounding. Like last year, assist-wise, he had 9.8, and I think he will get double-digit assists this season. I feel like he's going to not try and go out there and score 34 points per game again this year. He's going to chill out a little bit, especially with Klay Thompson having that weapon. He's going to defer to him and Kyrie Irving, who will hopefully be healthier this season, PJ Washington, and Luka will end up averaging around 10.1, 10.2 assists. He'll get over that hump, and I feel like if he's getting over that mark, if the rebounds are, around 9.5, maybe they start to notice that this is something he could achieve. Let him grab a few more boards, kind of lean into it a little bit. I'm going to say he goes ahead and pulls it off. Again, it's going to be difficult. It's only ever been done by two guys, but Luka just feels so obviously like one of the players that could eventually do it. I'll say it's this season. And for the Nuggets, I'm going to say Jokic does the same thing, that he joins Luka, I guess tying him as the third player to ever go ahead and average a triple-double. Jokic has been extremely close in the past. 2022, 2023, 11.8 rebounds, 9.8 assists. He was 0.2 assists away. He was 1 full assist away this season. I'm going to say he also gets over the hump a little bit. He averaged around 26.4 points per game. I feel like, again, he's not going to get worse, but maybe he takes a little bit less in terms of shots, tries to get some of the young players involved, helps guys develop throughout the season, lets Jamal Murray kind of get into a rhythm because he was off this year in the playoffs. And it clearly is not that hard for him to get close to 10. Again, he had 9.8 last season. The rebounds are a given. The points are a given. It just is going to be some variation on those dimes. So yeah, let me go out there and say that Jokic does it as well to give us two players in the same season averaging a triple-double, which of course has never happened before. For Detroit, I'm going to say that Ausar Thompson gets some serious all-defensive consideration. Now, the offense is abysmal when it comes to his game. I'm hopeful there's some improvement this year, but I think that's still a very raw work in progress. But defensively, he was unbelievable last season sometimes. Now, there are moments where he fouls quite a bit because he's a young defender and he makes mistakes, but I'll never forget one of the first games of last season when he went up against Gilgeous-Alexander. Some of the best defense I've ever seen played on Shai. And I've seen Shai be guarded by the best defenders in the world because he's the Thunder's best player. But Ausar Thompson was so good. He's so quick. He's an amazing athlete. He's got good hands, great timing. Ausar is going to be a staple of all defensive teams. If he won a DPOY at some point, wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. I'm going to say that this season he gets serious consideration. I don't know if the Pistons are good enough defensively. I don't think they will be for him to actually make the team. But he's going to start racking up some votes. And people are going to quickly note that, hey, this is a guy that's going to be there pretty soon. And the second the Pistons get a good enough defense, Ausar is going to be on those teams. For the Warriors, I'm going to say that they move Wiggins, Moody, and some picks for someone at the deadline. I don't know who it is, but I think they finally go ahead and cash in some chips. I've said this before, I don't anticipate this team being very good. I think they need to get Curry a real second player, and I think that'll be a chance for them to go ahead and do so. Wiggins has lost a lot of his value. He's not nearly as good as he was back in 2022 when they won the finals. Looking at their depth chart with like Buddy Hield in town now and D'Anthony Melton and them really loving pods, it feels like Moody's again going to follow the rotation. I just want him to get a chance somewhere else. Steph's getting up there in age. I think they cash in some picks. Again, I don't know who it is. Maybe it is a Zach LaVine, and it renders my Bulls prediction completely wrong, which a lot of these are going to be incorrect. Like, I want to say like a Jeremy Grant maybe, but he doesn't fit this team who has a bunch of forwards with Draymond Green and Jonathan Kuminga. Maybe it's like an Ayton or another big of some kind. I don't really know. I don't know who it's going to be, but I don't think the Warriors go the full season without making a big splash. They tried to with like Paul George this summer, Larry Markkinen. They know they've got to make a move. I think they get one done. For the Rockets, I'm going to say that Reed Sheppard shoots at least 42% from three in his rookie season. I don't know what the volume is going to look like because they've got a lot of guards, a lot of mouths to feed, but I think he's going to be knocked out. Obviously, was extremely knocked down in college. Think that carries over to the NBA. He'll get some pretty good looks off of passes from like Fred VanVleet and Amin Thompson and now Prince Şengün. And this would put him in the top 10, I believe, all time, maybe 9th, right around that range for rookie three-point percentage in a single season. I think he's very capable of that. I am really high on him. I think he's going to have a great chance to go out there and compete for Rookie of the Year. And before too long, they're going to have to give him ample minutes because he's just one of those players that's going to help the Rockets win, especially a team that needs an offensive boost. Reed Sheppard's got to get some great PT. For the Pacers, I'm going to say that Benedict Mathurin gets some coach's decision DNPs throughout the season. He was recently a 6th overall pick. He is a very talented young player, but I don't think he's quite the archetype of guy the Pacers need every single night just because he's a bucket getter. And this is a team that is elite offensively. They just have one of the best offenses of all time, despite Mathurin missing a good portion of the season. What they really need are guys that are going to defend while also contributing to that offense. And Benedict Mathurin, not a good defender, at least at this point in his career. Maybe that changes this season. But when you have also a stacked rotation with like Halliburton and McConnell and Nembhard and Shepherd and Nesmith and Siakam and Obi Toppin and Miles Turner and Jarris Walker feels like he should get some minutes. This is a really good team that I think is eventually going to be forced into a consolidation trade. They're going to have to because they have a bunch of depth and it feels like they need that one more piece to get over the top and take down some of the top dogs in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, I'm excited to see what Mathurin can do this season, but if there are some games where he's staying on the bench, I'm not that surprised. For the Clippers, I'm going to predict that Tyronn Lue ends up on the hot seat. Now, he's not going to get fired this season. I wouldn't say so. And part of the reason that won't happen, why this is a bold prediction, is because he just signed an extension back in May that keeps him with the Clippers till 2029. So that's 5 years into the future. They gave him, I'm sure, a good bit of money. He's one of the league's most respected coaches. So it'd be kind of crazy if they fired him this season, but I do feel like the Clippers are going to underperform relative to what the front office wants to see, especially in the new arena, and that a rebuild is inevitable within the next few years. I just don't see this lasting. They might try to make it last, but even this season, like if they miss the playoffs, I'm not that surprised, especially if an injury pops up, which it feels like it always does for the Clippers. So yeah, I feel like there's a real chance we go into the summer. The Clippers front office is unhappy with how they performed. Maybe they'll realize they need to rebuild, but maybe they won't and try and blame Tyronn Lue. I just could see a world where they mutually part ways sooner than later, especially if Tyronn Lue doesn't want to coach a rebuild, which feels like that's the direction they're heading within the next few years. So yeah, I, again, don't think he's fired this season, but if he's not the coach for the Clippers going to the next few years, don't be surprised. Other team in LA, we've got the Lakers, and for them, I'm going to say that they take a chance on Robert Williams. The more that I've thought about this today in particular, the more that I really feel like this has a good chance of happening. Robert Williams reportedly is on the trade block. He's a good candidate, and it makes sense. He's around $13 million a year, which is not that bad of a contract for a player who, when healthy, is hyper-productive. Back in 2022, he probably would have won Defensive Player of the Year if he didn't get hurt towards the end of the season, and Marcus Smart ends up winning it. He's really, really good. Now, the problem is he ever going to be able to stay on the court? And now the Lakers do have injury concerns of their own with AD and LeBron. So maybe they don't want to take a chance on that, but that feels like the exact type of upside swing the Lakers are going to have to take if they want to compete for a championship in the last few years of LeBron and AD being together. Plus, if Robert Williams does stay healthy, that could be a steal of a contract, and a defensive frontcourt of him and AD is unbelievable. Those are two ridiculous defensive bigs. It could really help you buy a bit more into that identity. Well, you know, LeBron and D'Lo and Reeves kind of give you that offense that you need, that punch. They can make some other trades on the perimeter because I don't think it's going to cost you that much to get Robert Williams, whose value is probably a lot lower than usual. So yeah, this is one I'm going to go ahead and predict straight up that they trade for Robert Williams. Robert Williams will be a Laker. Probably not before the season, but some point during the early year, I'm going to say they make that move and take a swing on a guy who, again, when he's healthy, is unbelievable. For the Grizzlies, I'm going to say that Desmond Bane averages 25 plus points per game. Now, that might not seem that bold because he just averaged 23.7, but he did do that on a team that was without Ja Morant. He was forced into taking a lot more shots, so you might think his numbers would take a bit of a decline. You know, with Zach Edey into the fold, and Gigi Jackson's going to be there after he gets back from his surgery, and Vince Williams, Ja Morant, of course. But I do think Desmond Bane is in for a bit of a jump. I just feel like when Ja Morant returns, he's going to be on a revenge mode this season. He's going to be attacking everybody, getting downhill, dishing out to Desmond Bane on the perimeter. And this Grizzlies team is going to have a lot more weapons than they've had in the past, which will open up the game for Desmond Bane and allow him to be hyper productive. He's just a player I'm so high on. He's such an efficient scorer. I think he's gotten some good experience as a bit of a playmaker too, which is going to make him more dangerous. His game continues to evolve. So yeah, give me Desmond Bane around 25 points per game in all-star conversations if the Grizzlies are good enough and just having a career year. For the Heat, I'm going to say that Tyler Hero is spending his last season with Miami. Now, this is typically a team that doesn't make those big deadline trades, but I think at this point, they're going to have to do something. I just don't love this team right now. Jimmy Butler is in his last year of this contract. Maybe he re-signs with the Heat, but I don't think it's a given, so I think they're going to make a swing for the fences. And just that backcourt of Hero and Rozier feels a little bit redundant to me. I don't love that fit necessarily. Hero is one of their more valuable assets. So yeah, I say they go ahead and trade him. I don't know for who. I'm not going to make any predictions on that front, but that Hero will be somewhere else before the end of the season. For the Bucks, I'm going to say that Damian Lillard finishes with the highest field goal percentage of his entire career. That current mark is 46.3%, which came from his last season in Portland, arguably his best individual season ever. And this past season with the Bucks took a big hit, just 42.4% from the field, 35.4% from deep. It was not the usual pretty efficient Damian Lillard, the dominant scorer, but this year, I think it'll be a lot better. Going into the past season, he was going through some stuff in his personal life. He said himself he wasn't in the best shape. It was a big adjustment too, going from Portland where he played his whole career to Milwaukee, now playing alongside a superstar. So he's figuring out, when do I score? When do I defer? I feel like they'll have a bit better of a feel on that. They'll have a bit more chemistry. They'll run the pick and roll more often. That'll be down. And with weapons like Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez to take pressure off, I think the shots will get easier for him, assuming those guys can stay healthy. And that he'll just be much more like the Dame we recently saw in Portland than the one we saw in Milwaukee this past year. He'll be efficient. The points per game won't be anything insane. I think the assist will come up. And Dame will just be back to being a really efficient, dominant scorer. And he can still take over in those clutch moments when you need him to. But I think overall we'll see a bit more of a step back Dame until they get to the playoffs, and they really need him to ramp up to win the games on the highest stage. For the Timberwolves, I'm going to say that Terrence Shannon is the far more impactful rookie this season than Rob Dillingham is. Rob is the guy that everybody's excited about, was the top 10 pick, the bucket getter off the bench they really want, but it's hard for young guards in that role, young guards in the NBA in general, being asked to come into the fold, especially for a team that's trying to compete for a championship, that's going to be playing some really high-stakes games. He's really young as well. I think Rob Dillingham's got an immense ceiling. He's going to be really good in the league. But year one, Terrence Shannon, I believe, will be way more impactful. He's played a few more years in college. He's a much more ready now player. And I think his minutes will be a lot higher than Rob Dillingham's. Rob might start a little bit throughout the season to get some run, but I think by the time the playoffs roll around, Terrence Shannon is still in the rotation while Rob isn't. Just again, because he's a really young guard that doesn't have an archetype that typically translates into the NBA directly. It takes a few years, and the Wolves don't really have the time for that at the moment. So yeah, give me Terrence Shannon to be the much more impactful rookie in year one, even though Rob Dillingham was the much higher drafted player. For the Pelicans, I'm going to say that Zion Williamson leads the team in assists. He wasn't that far off this season. He was 0.7 behind Brandon Ingram, but I think he surpasses him this year. Of course, Ingram's got, the whole contract dispute, so I feel like that could play into it a little bit. I don't know what his game is going to look like. Is that going to be on his mind? How did they utilize him? And I feel like Zion proved last season that him in that point forward role is so good. I mean, this team was right up there in contention for a top 4 or 5 seed before Ingram dealt with an injury. They fell off a little bit towards the end of the year. I think they really continue with the point Zion thing, even though they did add DeJounte Murray, another guard who you could put the ball in the hands of. They've got CJ McCollum, still do have Brandon Ingram. A lot of players that you could let operate, but I think clearly they are the most effective when Zion has the ball in his hands. He's creating advantages. He's getting downhill, kicking out the shooters. I think they really continue to utilize that, and Zion averages right around 6 assists, which will end up leading this team. For the Knicks, I'm going to say that Dante DiVincenzo is top 3 in 6 Man of the Year voting. Like I mentioned earlier, Jalen Johnson, when I made my way too early NBA awards, Dante was my pick for 6 Man of the Year. I might still go with him, but at the very least, he will be top 3 in my opinion. Naz Reid and Malik Monk will be up there too, but Dante is just one of those players that I feel like is in such a good spot to succeed. There are so many weapons around him. He was really good last season, had a career year, especially when Jalen Brunson and basically the whole team was injured. He stepped in, was taking a million shots. He was putting up like 25 and 30 points a game. He's gonna be the weapon that people forget about sometimes, because when you have to guard Brunson and Randall and OG and McHale and Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, like all these players, I think Dante has the chance to really pop off the bench and just be this knockdown shooter, this high-level scorer and solid wing defender that makes a massive impact on winning, which gives him big-time 6 Man of the Year consideration, especially if the Knicks have a really good record like I think they will. For my favorite team, the Thunder, I'm gonna say that Isaiah Hartenstein goes out there and shoots at least 1 3-point attempt per game this season. That would be way higher than his previous career high of 0.5 attempts per game in the 2023 year with the New York Knicks. I just feel like the Thunder really love that 5-out system, that they want to play him and Chet together if they can, but you want your big to be able to shoot if you're the Thunder. And Hartenstein has shown ability in the past to knock down threes, not at a super high clip or at a crazy volume or anything, but he's shown he has that in his bag. And I'm not saying he's going to go out there and shoot 4 or 5 threes a game, but I do think 1 a game is very realistic. There have been a lot of clips of him shooting in the gym. It feels like every time I see footage of him this offseason, it's been him trying to shoot threes. I think they really want to get him to lean into that, attempt at least 1 per game, and if he knocks them down somewhat effectively, the Thunder become even scarier with now an extra stretch big to add on to Chet Holmgren. And I do think, being able to have that versatility for this offense, especially with a guy who loves to drive as much as Shea, would be pretty big. The Magic, I'm going to say they're the best defense in the NBA, but also top half in offense this season. Best defense doesn't feel bold enough for me because they were pretty close to that conversation this past season. If they get a full year from Jonathan Isaac and the addition of KCP, I think that's very realistic. But the offense, that's the big thing for me. I think adding KCP, that shooter, will be massive for them. Suggs has become a good shooter. Paolo Banchero has improved his efficiency. I think it'll only come along more and more, especially as the spacing gets better around him. Franz Wagner had a terrible season last year shooting the basketball. I cannot imagine it's that bad. And I think he will improve in that regard, become at least a serviceable 3-point shooter again. Like, they got rid of Markelle Fultz, who was a really bad offensive player. So yeah, I think it just kind of comes along this season. I'm not saying they're going to be a good or even elite offense, but I think right around league average with the best defense is something that could be a very scary recipe for the rest of the NBA, especially that Eastern Conference. For the Sixers, I'm going to say that Joel Embiid, for the first time in his career, plays 70 plus games. Might be insane to say, especially because last year he played not that many because he was injured, but I'm going to say that this is the healthy season for Embiid, mainly because having Paul George and Maxey there now, as well as Drummond as a solid backup big, I think it'll take a little bit of the workload off of him. They don't need him to score 36 points per game. They don't need him to be on the floor every 5 minutes. You can defer a little bit to Maxey and Paul George. You can take over late in the game if you need, or if you're falling behind, be the MVP all-time dominant big man scorer that you are. But just in general, I feel like he can relax a little bit. Now, this might fail just because they might load manage him here and there, but Nick Nurse said last season, he wanted Embiid to play more games. He wanted the whole team to kind of get into that rhythm going to the playoffs. So I do think they lean into that, but I do think it results in Embiid getting less minutes and, again, not trying as hard as he needs to, because there's more talent around him. They can still win games, even if he's not, playing all these minutes and scoring like 37 a night. For the Suns, I'm going to say that Bradley Beal gets moved to the bench at some point in the season and becomes the Super Six Man. This is one of the only ones I kept from last video because I really like this one. My rationale is the same as it was my 10 bold predictions video. Basically, Tyus Jones comes in. It sounds like he's going to be the starting point guard, and I just really don't like the defense of a Tyus Jones, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Yusuf Nurkic lineup. That feels awful to me. I think having Beal instead as that scorer off the bench, because you don't really have that many guys right now in that role, would be big for this team. Now, he's making like $50 million a year, so that might seem crazy. But when you're the Suns, you have nothing to lose. Like, you've put all your assets into this. You have to make the decisions that are the best. Budenholzer, I feel like, is a coach that will be willing to make that decision. And you put like a Royce O'Neal, maybe if Ryan Dunn starts to pop off offensively, or at least is serviceable with his high-level defense, maybe he slots in or something like that. Maybe it's Grayson Allen for that knockdown shooting to kind of just be that seamless fit. I don't know what it is, but I do think Bradley Beal getting moved to the bench at some point throughout the season is very realistic. For the Blazers, I'm just going to predict a fire sale. DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams, Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, all gone within the next year. Maybe it's leading into the summer a little bit, but by the time we're talking on September 10th next year, none of those guys will be on the roster. Ayton, it's a little bit harder to think of him finding a home, but I think he's got some of his value back, and his contract is getting a little bit further along, so I do think a team will be willing to take a chance on him. We talked about Robert Williams a little bit earlier. He just feels like such an obvious buy low candidate for some team out there. I hope he can get healthy. Jeremy Grant, that's another guy I like for the Lakers if they don't go after Robert Williams. He just feels like a natural fit there, and there's been some rumors about their interest. Anthony Simons, I just feel like they've got a lot of guards with, Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe, of course, specifically those two guys. They added like Denny Avdia, so that gives you a wing, which makes kind of the Scoot, Simons, Shaedon thing a little bit more difficult. I think Simons ends up as the odd man out. He's also a little bit further along in his timeline than those other guys. Not that he's that old. They don't have to trade him. But I do feel like he'll be moved at some point, especially because that's a player I feel like you could get pretty good value back for if you're the Blazers and, you're trying to tank for Cooper Flagg this season. So, yeah, I think all those guys end up gone. I don't know what returns they get. I don't know who comes back. But none of those players will be Blazers, again, by the time we talk September 10th of 2025. For the Kings, I'm going to say that despite Devin Carter being slated to miss the first few months of the season, he's still going to make an all-rookie team. Probably second team because he won't play that many games, but I just think the impact is going to be huge when he finally makes it onto the court for a Kings team that needs that backup guard, that needs that scrappy defender. Devin Carter is going to come in and make that immediate impact in a rookie class that feels like it's not going to pop that much. A lot of guys that are more so kind of role players. I think Carter's impact could be really felt when he lands back in that Kings lineup, and yeah, as long as he plays a decent number of games enough to show off that impact, he will still be on an all-rookie team. For the Spurs, I'm going to say that Chris Paul averages at least 10 assists per game. I mean, just off passing to Wemby, he could get 7-8 dimes a night just throwing the ball up, giving him lobs, down low in the post, hitting him on some threes. Whatever. Wemby alone is going to get him a number of assists per game. And he's still got like Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson. He's got Harrison Barnes. So there are some weapons out there. I think he's got something to prove too. So yeah, give me CP3 averaging double-digit dimes. It'll only be the second time it happens since 2016. He averaged 10.8 in 2022 with the Suns. But it'll be one of the league leaders. So regain a bunch of his value. Trying to go for a big-time contract to go ahead and wrap up his career. So yeah, give me Chris Paul 10-plus assists. For the Raptors, I'm going to say that RJ Barrett is in all-star conversations early on in the season. By the time the All-Star break rolls around, because I'm not expecting the Raptors to be very good, I don't know if he'll still be in there, but at least at the beginning of the year, if the Raptors rattle off a few wins, I feel like there's going to be some conversations because I'm expecting a jump. When he got to Toronto, he put up 22 points per game, 55% from the field, which is nuts efficiency for him, 39% from deep, 6.4 rebounds, 4.1 assists. Like, those are all-star wing numbers. In the Eastern Conference, where the talent isn't quite as deep as it is over in the West, he could make a bit of an argument. I don't know if the efficiency is going to be quite as good. That was only a 32-game sample size, but I do think he's going to have a really good season this year. He's going to really turn some heads, showcase a lot of the potential that people saw him having when he was taken third overall with the Knicks back in 2019. Yeah, I think the case will fall off a little bit as they reach the All-Star break and they don't have a very good record. But look at RJ to get some All-Star nods and people to really start to eye him as a big-time breakout candidate very early on in this season. For the Utah Jazz, I'm once again just going to predict a fire sale. Walker Kessler, Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, all traded by the time the deadline rolls around. We've heard reports that Walker Kessler isn't really in their long-term plans. Makes sense. I mean, John Collins and he can't really play together. It never really worked. Kessler doesn't really shoot the ball. Didn't have the best season last year. He's got some fun rim protection, but the offensive game is limited. So I think he ends up somewhere else where they don't really need him in that big of a role. Like New York, I think makes a bunch of sense. New Orleans, who could definitely use a big man. One of those spots, probably Colin Sexton. In my opinion, one of the most underrated players in the league. The second he lands with a good team, people are going to realize just how insanely valuable and good he is at this point. And I think he'll play really good this year. He'll get his value up and the Jazz will cash in on that. And Jordan Clarkson, bad year last season. This year, I think he takes a bit of a bounce back, even if it's not great. Somebody will take a chance on him around the deadline for probably cheap because he's not going to have the most value in the world. And the Jazz want to tank. If you ask me, I think they want to be up there in the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes. So they'll go all out. They'll trade some of their top guys by the time the deadline rolls around and be potentially the worst team in the West. Battling with Portland, it'll be one of those two teams. And finally, for the Wizards, I think Jonas Valanciunas is traded the first moment possible. He's not going to get past December on this team. To me, the whole reason they signed him, which was a surprising one, by the way, is so that they could add him, he could get his value up on a bad team, play pretty well, and they could flip him right around the time he's actually able to be traded to some team that needs a big man that's looking for a bit of an offensive punch, and he'll contribute somewhere else. While the Wizards get an asset in return for cap space they had to spend anyways. Lakers, another team, if like Robert Williams is an option, I could see him landing there. It would be hilarious if he landed back with the Pelicans. I don't think it does happen, but I guess I've seen weirder stuff. So yeah, to me, this just reeks of trying to flip him for some more value, which, hey, I think that makes sense for the Wizards. And they don't want to win games at all. They want to be the worst team in the Eastern Conference if they can, to go after a Cooper Flagg or one of the other names towards the top of the 2025 draft class, because Flagg isn't the only very talented prospect. And the Nets are going to give them some stiff competition. So yeah, expect Valanciunas out of there pretty quick. And I think Kyle Kuzma is out the door by the time the deadline rolls around too. And yeah, with all that being said, that's my bold prediction for every team in 2025. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought of your team's bold prediction. Is there something else you think is really interesting? All the stuff I said at the beginning of the video, like leave a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. That helps the channel out way more than y'all realize. And yeah, as always, would love to hear some ideas you have for videos, things that you want to hear me talk about going into the season, because we do still have around 50-ish days more, like 40 some days now to kill before the year does end up getting here, the NBA season that is. Like when preseason comes around, I'll talk about that too. But yeah, for the moment, appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say back.